I'd like to introduce Mr. Jim Kruse, who will now come up here and talk to us all. I know. Last night we were, those of us at the banquet, pleased to have two members into the Casino Chip Gaming Token Collectors Club Hall of Fame, one of which was Mark Leiterman, who's not in the room this morning, and the other one is Jim Kruse. If you have your program booklet or have looked at it at all, on page 22, you'll see Jim's bio. I can assure you that the bio that Jim actually sent me was about 3 lines long, and I tried to embellish it a little bit more because he's a very modest individual. When we have the first seminar of the club's convention, we try and get someone who has been there, done that, new and old, and give you some ideas and some tips and some ways to communicate with other people, go into the showroom, and so on. And what we're going to do this morning is Jim is going to talk for as long as Jim wants to talk, and we're going to hold questions until our speaker says it's time for questions. I know some people don't like that routine, but my experience doing these things is, excuse me, people get carried away with asking a question in the middle of it, and then someone else says, no, that's not true, and before you know it, the speaker is no longer in charge of the seminar. It's people having a discussion on the floor. So we will hold the questions until Mr. Kruse is done. Without further ado, Mr. Kruse.
Good morning. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. I'd like to thank Sheldon for the opportunity to get up at 6:30 in the morning and do this. Not too many people could have talked me into that, but he did. Actually, I didn't even know there were 2 6:30s in a day. I'm familiar with the one that comes in the evening, and imagine my surprise when I find out there's one in the morning, too. So thank you, Sheldon, for that. The name of this is First Timers and Old Timers. I've been both. I know this is billed as an educational seminar. You're probably not going to get very educated at this, so I hope you're not disappointed in that. But we've got a few stories and a few things and maybe a tip or two that will help the first-timers. I've collected since 1976. I know what you're thinking. Jesus, Jim, you don't look that old. Somebody is thinking that. Thank you, Christine, and thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. I lived here back then in 1976. I've actually lived in Las Vegas 3 different times. Must be something about it I like. I keep coming back and they keep throwing me out. But in 1976, I was a young single man. And I was down at a club on the strip called the Silver Slipper. And we didn't have a lot of money back in those days. We were poor dice dealers, and me and a couple buddies were in there. And I believe one of the local beer distributors were having a promotion. And that promotion was like 50-cent beer, Coors beers or something. So we'd go over the crap table and we would place bets on the 5 or on the 6 and 8, which if you place a $6 bet on the 6 or an 8, and it hits, you get $7 back. And the first time I won the bet, I looked at one of the chips and I thought, my gosh, look at this thing. It's really different. So I stuck it in the other pocket, and as the night went on, I won several of those. Well, it turns out that was the 1976 bicentennial chip that the Silver Slipper had issued. And I looked at it when I got home the next morning, and I thought, boy, that's really neat. And I got thinking, I wonder if anybody else has done this. So there was a place called the Casino over here now where Palace Station is. And I happened to be close to where I live, so I went over there, and sure enough, not only did they have another $1 chip, they had a 5. Well, needless to say, no way I'm going to spend $5 for one of these things, but I didn't mind spending $1. Went to the MGM, same thing, had a $5. I don't think so. Went to the Sahara, same thing. Did find another $1 at, I don't remember where I found another $1. But I found another $1 somewhere. And so that was kind of the start of chip collecting. Actually, just a quick story. Not too many years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I got one of Doug Sato's catalogs at home where he was having an auction. And in that, he had a chip from the Dionne Warwick. said Happy New Year, Dionne Warwick, and he speculated as to what it was and so forth on. Well, it turns out he was pretty darn close. New Year's Eve in 1969-1970, Dionne Warwick appeared at the Sands Hotel, and I happened to go to the show that night. And she had these chips, pink chips made up with a key ring thing on them, and she gave them out to everyone that was in the crowd. It said, Happy New Year, Dionne Warwick. I said, Doug, I think I've got one of those still that I got the night she was there. And sure enough, I dug through some of my stuff and found it, and I thought, gee, maybe I started collecting earlier than I thought I did. But it was a great show. Ed Sullivan and his wife were there in the crowd that night. Really a nice fellow, stood around and signed autographs after the show for everyone, real personable. Really impressed me. I'd seen some celebrities that weren't so nice out here. Yeah, and his wife, I'll never forget, it was New Year's Eve, and his wife had on this unbelievable, I mean, it was, it's never 20 degrees out here. She had on this unbelievable mink coat, just unbelievable, and that was my Ed Sullivan thing. As you know, the name of this is First Timers and Old Timers. I've been both. I came to the first convention. This is my 17th convention. I've seen a lot of changes in this. This one appears to be one of the better ones that we've ever had in the last 10 years at least. Just this place, the facilities, and I don't know if you were at the banquet last night, but Mr. Gaughan gave a great speech. He's if you weren't there, I'm sorry you weren't there, because he's just a down-to-earth and one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. He really is. He gave everybody at the banquet a $5 chip, and he just didn't go down the cage and say, give me $1,000 worth of chips. He paid for that out of his pocket. At Nevada gaming regulations, he has to. And so, and he was worried about that. That was his big thing. We were talking yesterday afternoon, we were at the show, and he said, I've got to get the chips for everybody. He said, I got some new chips in the vault, and so he sent a guy down to do that. So if you see Mr. Gaughan around the hotel, introduce yourself, thank him for letting us be at his hotel, and just a super guy. He really is. As I said, I've attended all 17 of these. One of the most memorable ones was in 2000. I got married to my wife, Debbie, in Lake Tahoe, and then I broke the news to her. I said, well, we got to go down to Vegas for a few days and spend our honeymoon. And we got to Las Vegas, and of course, I thought, I got a suite there in the Tropicana, and boy, she was pretty impressed by that. And then I said, oh, by the way, I got a few things I have to do here. And 4 days later, I came and got her, and we went home. Needless to say, she hasn't forgotten that. So that was a very memorable one. And next year is our 10th anniversary, and I think we're going to go back to Lake Tahoe. And I don't believe we'll get her to come to the convention again. But, hey, you never know. Collecting for the first timers, and this is some advice that I never took. Of course, I'm not good at taking advice, but boy, I wished I had of. When I started collecting, I thought my goal would be to get one of every chip. When I got serious about it, actually, I got my first chip there in '76 that really counted, and picked up some more, but I got serious about it about '82, and my goal was to get every chip ever made. And I tried. Believe me, I did. When I come home from convention about 4 years ago, and as I was going, I don't have a list because I'm not real organized, but as I was going through and putting the chips away, every chip I bought, I found that I already had. With one or two exceptions, so I thought, this isn't good. So I decided I'm going to pare this down. But anyway, the advice that I'm getting to, that I hope some of you first-timers do take, is specialize in something. And there's a million things. Everybody told me this years later, and of course I didn't do it, but specialize in something. And there's a million things you can specialize in. Nevada, Las Vegas, Northern Nevada, small towns in Nevada, New Jersey, foreign, Colorado, illegals, Indians, riverboats, California, foreign, and that's just the chips. You can also collect dice, what I consider go-withs, and that's because they go with your chip collecting. You can collect dice, cards, tokens, which, I don't know, they made millions of tokens, but it seems like they're drying up because no one has them anymore. One of the big problems with tokens is they weigh so darn much, and if you put a whole thing of them on a shelf, if that shelf's not up very good, it'll collapse sooner or later. So, and I'm speaking from experience here. And fortunately, my wife wasn't anywhere around when that happened. but next convention, I'm sure she won't be here for that either. Storage options. That's a question that I've seen come up on the internet several times, and of course, storing options are limited by your imagination. Most people like to put them in albums so they can go through and look at them from time to time, and there's again, a million different options on albums that you can do. My friend Greg Susong, he has his collection in the little chip boxes where he's got, Greg's, I know most of you probably know Greg, he's very organized, and they're in like alphabetical order and all that stuff, and that's a great way to do it. Or if you're like me, you can come home, throw them in a drawer, and every 5 years you go through them and you put them somewhere else. And why is there chips in your underwear drawer? I don't know. And and again, another first-timer question we get a lot is acquiring chips. And acquiring chips are real easy. There's, of course, the casinos, which is the first place you might want to go and get those. A lot of casinos in different jurisdictions won't sell you chips from the cage. You have to buy them at the table. If they have dice, I always recommend going to the dice table because there you can get a pretty good idea what's on. Even when they have 250 chips, a lot of times people come up and bet them in the dice game, and dice dealers and dice supervisors just love to get those off the game because, you got to give them $5 because usually they don't have 50-cent pieces on there, but they just love to get rid of them. So that's a good way to acquire them. The cage, of course, shows, which I guess by now most of you are familiar with. The internet. The internet, of course, has changed the hobby tremendously. I was probably one of the last guys to get on the internet, being not as too technical savvy. But I've been on it a little while now, and it's an amazing tool. I mean, right before I left to come out here, some guy from Nigeria is sending me $857,000 as soon as my check clears. I mean, it's fantastic. I met a girl from Russia that my wife don't know about. I only had to send her $30. And then there was this other email I got about making something bigger if I ordered it, and I didn't. Can I say that? Anyway, I didn't do that. Some of you know me, and you know that not only do I collect this stuff, but I'm in the gambling business. I have been all my life. I've been in the gambling business since 1968. My father was in the gambling business. His father was in the gambling business. Notice I call it gambling business. I took that from Benny Binion. If you went up and said gaming business to Benny Binion, he'd throw you out of the casino. He wasn't in the gaming business. He was in the gambling business. Entertainment, gaming, that all come along with the corporations, Harris, so forth and so on. But I started in 1968 working for my father, running a dice game. I come out here a couple of years later because I thought I knew everything about the business, which I found out I really didn't. Matter of fact, to this day, I'm finding out I really don't know that much about it. But I've been doing it an awful long time. I've seen an awful lot of changes. I've seen a lot of things come and go. Today, I work for an Indian tribe I've been with in Oklahoma and Kansas. I've been with them for 8 years. I got in the ground floor when they got into gambling. I know a lot of you go to Indian casinos. Indian gaming is very misunderstood by the general public. Well, you regulate yourselves, which is true. We do regulate ourselves. But that's my job. I'm a regulator with our tribe. I'm the executive director of our gaming commission. And I can assure you, we have a national convention, and then we have 2 regulator conventions a year, plus a lot of seminars, a lot of things. And believe me, we are tougher on the tribal casinos than any state regulator or agency would ever be. I have one rule: if I have a dispute that comes to my office and they haven't settled it, I usually fine for the customer because it should have never got to my office. It should have been settled before it ever got there. And I know Cindy, she's worked in tribal gaming for quite a while also, and I know she's like me. She likes it and she respects it, and it's been a wonderful thing for the tribes. Anything the tribes get, they deserve, because if you know anything about our history of our country, the one group of people that were just totally screwed were the Indians, believe me. And anything they get, they deserve. And the gambling was to make them become self-sufficient, not so much to have to depend on the government handouts anymore. And it's improved the quality of a lot of tribes. We see tribes and now sharing with less fortunate tribes. They're giving them grants every year. Our tribe, we use that money for health, education, and welfare. Our chief is 89 years old. His name is Leopold Bearskin. He was a colonel in the Air Force. He was a bomber pilot in World War II. He retired from the Air Force. He came back to Oklahoma with the only mission in life was to make life better for his people, which was the Wyandotte Nation of Oklahoma. Wyandotte started in, they think, Canada, upper New York, come down through the Delaware Valley, were promised land in 4 different states. When they got there, the land was never there. Came to Kansas, where they had a bad cholera epidemic, I believe it was. A lot of the tribe died there in Kansas. There's a cemetery right behind my office, actually, which is an old Indian cemetery. Were promised land in Oklahoma by the government, got there, the land wasn't there, but the Eastern Shawnee tribe had already been there and gotten land, and the Shawnees gave the Wyandottes 140 acres for their people to live on and grow stuff on. Unfortunately, if you've ever been to Oklahoma, you can't grow anything in Oklahoma. So, like I say, what the Indians get from the gambling business, they deserve, believe me. I've met a lot of interesting people over the years in this business. Some of them probably wouldn't want me to talk about it. Some of them I wouldn't want to talk about. But I've seen a lot of things, and we get to the question and answer period here, which is coming shortly because I'm about out of stuff to say. You're welcome to ask me any questions that you want, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. But again, it's a great hobby. I want to thank Sheldon and Christine for the opportunity to do this, even though I complain about the early hour and getting up to do this. I have enjoyed it. And you're in a great hobby. The best part of this hobby is the people. In the 20 years almost that I've been involved in the club, I've made some great friends. I've met some really, really wonderful people. And I don't know what's your reason for being in the hobby. If you're just a habitual collector, like a lot of us are, I am. It's a fun thing. There's a lot of opportunity to acquire stuff. If you're in it for investments, it's up and down. We've seen that, but it's one of the only hobbies I know of where you can go right back to the cage and get your original investment if you bought all of your. Now, if you pay $20,000 for a chip and you go to say, "Yeah, I paid $20,000 for this, I want my money back," they're probably going to call security. But I know that happens, and it's a great hobby. Investment opportunities are just unbelievable. We're in a little bit of a down period, but like everything, it'll come back. The one concern that I keep talking about, and I think they're probably tired of hearing me talk about the board. I was a Jim Beamer. I don't know if you're familiar with Jim Beam bottles, but the International Association of Jim Beam Bottle Collectors had a little over 20,000 people in it at one time. Huge conventions, huge club. Now it's probably smaller than our club. You know why? The membership all died. They died off. They did not work and recruit to get young people in that hobby. And to me, that I know the finances and all the other things that we do are very important, but to me, the single most important goal of this club right now should be to find a way to interest and recruit young people in this hobby. Otherwise, we're going to look around 10, 15 years, and here's going to be Sheldon. He won't be able to hear, and he'll have a cane. Of course, Christine will still look great, just like she does now. But I mean, there's just going to be a bunch of old codgers like me and Keith and Joe and Sheldon in it, and it's not going to be a good hobby. It really isn't. So keep that in mind. If you don't take anything else away from this seminar, take that. Try to get each person in this club tries to get one young person interested in our hobby. It'll believe me, it'll pay dividends in the end. It really will. So if you have questions, hold up your hand, and Christine, you're the first one. No, I don't have a table. No, I do. Like when I thinned my collection down 3 years ago, I had a table. The first 2 years I had tables. If I happen to discover some chips, then I try to sell them. But I don't really have a lot of interest in that. shoplifting. James, will you be at your table all day? No. James, I don't know if you know James Capiglia back here, but he's been...
That's not the position of the club.
Oh, he's been a long-time dealer from day one. He's a great hobby member. He's always more than happy to help you with anything you want to know. He's brought his daughter with him again to the convention, and she's a very nice person also. So if you get a chance, stop by James's table. And buy his book. But no, Christine, to answer your question somewhat seriously, I've always found that you look at a chip and it's something you want. If it's the only one that has ever been seen, he's probably not going to negotiate. But if every dealer down the road has 3 of them, you say, gee, James, I think you might be a little high. Can you do better on this? He'll usually do better, but the key's not to be obnoxious or overbearing or say, you got to give me a better price on this. Just be polite, like I know all of you are, and ask him if he can do better, and most of our dealers usually can. Joe? The most common complaint is probably panhandling. We get a lot of, in our Kansas, we have 3 casinos in our Kansas City casino. We get a lot of people in there just there they'll stand around, and we have a large security contingent in that casino. Yeah, and we try to keep them out of there, but we get a lot of people in there asking for cigarettes. Do you have $1? If they see somebody hit a jackpot, they raise their sights. Do you have $20? You know, and we get a lot of that. As the most part, all 3 of our the Oklahoma casinos, one's in a truck stop, and it's the Lucky Turtle is the name of it. It's a real nice little place. Truck drivers, local time, never a problem. Our big casino is the Wyandotte Nation Casino, which is a full-service casino with table games. Again, in Oklahoma, not a lot of problems, but we have an urban casino in Kansas City, Kansas, called the 7th Street Casino. 500 machines, no table games. It's in downtown Kansas, and it's a tough place. We have a large, like I say, we have guards patrolling outside, armed guards patrolling, and they will shoot you. They're so it's not a place you want to mess around at. It really isn't. But we don't have a lot of problems, really. We don't. Any other questions, Aaron? Yes, sir. That's correct.
Could you possibly talk about the auction a little bit and things that people might want to consider when they go to the auction, especially if they've never been to the auction before?
Absolutely. This is our 7th, well, actually this isn't. This is our 19th auction, believe it or not. There was 2 years when we ran 2 auctions. But this is our 17th year in what we officially call the 17th auction. I've done all 19 of them. When you go to the auction, years ago, we tried to get something for everyone. Now, there's a $50 minimum on everything. I'm not the auction chairman. I'm just the auctioneer. I get up there, I do what they tell me, and I call it. I may have my own ideas of what would work better on the auction and try to get more people involved, but by the same token, the auction has been a big fundraiser for the club. The early years, there wouldn't have been a club without that auction. And so that's what their goal has been, is to raise funds, and they charge a commission on the buyer, they charge a commission on the seller. If you go to the auction and there's an item you want, the one thing I really recommend you do is set your limits. If you see something, you say, I'd like to have that for $50. Well, I'd like to have a new Lexus for $50, but that's probably not going to happen. So be realistic. Say, gee, this chip book's for $300. I'd go 2. But set your limit, $200. And when the bidding starts, it starts at 50, hang in there. And when it gets to your limit, you reach 200, don't fool yourself. Go, oh, I could go a little more, I could go a little more. I've done that many times. And when you get home, you just go, what did I do? So set limits on it. And again, the auctioneer is about half deaf and half blind now. So you really got to get his attention if you're out there in the crowd. You go, hey, I want to bid on that. Fortunately, we got a younger guy going to take it over next year, and he does a great job. And so maybe it won't be so hard to get his attention next year. But auctions are fun. If you've never been to one, definitely go. You'll enjoy, especially come to tomorrow night, because it's my last auction. I can tell dirty jokes. I can swear. I can do anything I want. They can't fire me. Oh, definitely come tomorrow night. Any other questions? Sunday?
First of all, if you're thinking about going to the auction or bidding on something, the lots are all on the floor, so you can inspect them.
That's correct. Thanks, Sunday. Your black jacket with the logo on, that's a nice looking jacket, Sunday. Did you get that as a wedding gift? For those of you who don't know, this is Sunday Silverman. She got married recently. And he seems like a real nice fella. But I notice he's not at the seminar with you here this morning. What's that about? Oh, really? Did you hear that, Sheldon? There's people who like to sleep at this time of morning. Sunny's wearing a jacket from the museum and that we're going to have someday. That was, again, my idea. I've gotten a lot of credit for having that idea. I posted it on the board late one night, and if you want to know the truth, I was drunk when I thought of it, and so I get a lot of credit there that I probably shouldn't get, but it's an idea that we have. My original idea was a small museum with a place that I called a clubhouse, a place for members to come when they come to town, get on the internet, to put our library, which is a totally underutilized thing that could be so great for new members and all of our members. And just a small museum. It's gotten to the point where we've hired a lady and they got ideas what they want to do with it. And I'm pretty sure it'll get done one of these days. We're obviously looking for that godfather, that sponsor that's going to come up and say, yeah, we want to get involved in this. And we got close, and unfortunately, we had some mishaps that it didn't work out, and as life goes on, people die. But we'll get it done sooner or later, and it's something that I really want to see for the entire membership, not just a few people. And I know these ideas get taken, and sometimes they get blown out of proportion. Sometimes they don't turn out the way you think they're going to turn out, but it's something I really want to see done, but I want to see it done for the entire membership, something that's not on a grand scale where we can't lose our butt, and it'll get done, and hopefully it'll get done at a scale and a level that everybody will like and enjoy. And by the way, if you're not for the museum, I don't have a problem with that. I think that makes great discussion from time to time when there are people that take a negative thing on it. So I don't have a problem. If you don't like the idea and you want to voice your opinion on it, not today, but sometimes, that's fine with me. Anybody? Blair? Yes, it has. As a matter of fact, as you know, I had to get up early this morning, and I opened the door, and there was a maid out in the hall. I said, Miss, can you come in and scrub my back for me while I'm showering? And she called security. So yeah, it has gone to my head a little bit, and hopefully I can find a more agreeable maid tomorrow when I wake up. Thank you, Larry. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. Any other questions? Huh? Oh, I can't win. I'm just going to start staying home, and I'm going to mail him a check and save the expenses of coming out here. If I just send him a check every year for $1,000, I'd be ahead. And I'm sure Michael would get the check, and he'd probably call and say, "Why are you sending me a check for $1,000?" Of course, let me explain this to you. And he probably wouldn't think as funny as I did. Anyone else? Anybody? Chip collecting questions? Gambling business questions? Yes, sir. Which ones? The book price? Books are a guideline. In other words, if we didn't have them, we'd all be lost. But to walk up and take either way, if you're going to try to sell a chip to a dealer and you take it up and you go, "Oh, look, this book's for $200, I want $200 for it," the dealer is probably going to tell you to sell it to the book. Okay? But if you look at the book and it's $200 and you really want the chip and you find it for $150, you feel like you got a bargain. If you have to pay $2 and a quarter, you think, "Gee, I'm not out of line because it books for $200. So books are a guideline. Books aren't a dyed in the cut and dry end all. This is what it's absolutely worth because it's in the book for that. That's not what books are for. Books are a guideline. And always remember that when you're buying or selling the chips. Yes, sir?
Trading chips like a non-value chip against a value chip. Now, book value for a lot of non-value chips, so, they scatter because basically they're rarer than some of the other chips. Now, what kind of factors do you take into consideration when you trade those type of chips?
How bad do you want it? That's always what I looked at. If it's something I really needed for my collection, which I'm a big riverboat collector because I've worked on them from day one, and I've got a pretty riverboat collection. And if it's very hard for me to find anything that I need for my collection. So if something comes up that is an error, or if it comes up, it's rare no cash value that was used for one tournament, and I have to trade a denomination chip to get it that I know is worth more money than that chip, I'll still do it because I want that chip for my collection. But if I'm an investor and I'm out there and somebody's wanting to trade with me, or if I'm a dealer and you come up to this table, I want to trade for this, well, keep in mind, the dealer has overhead. He's paying for the table. He had expenses of getting here as you did. He's got to have a profit. So that's why you kind of have to give them the benefit and let them make a little on you. Not a lot, James, just a little. Aaron? Absolutely. Well, I think it's great if you can help a new collector out. I'm for that 100%. Believe it or not, if I get the opportunity, I like to help out new collectors. Of course, trading, it's just like horse trading back in the old days. You know, if you make a deal and you know somebody got the better of you, oh God, I remind them of that every time I see them. Hey, remember when you got the best of me on that trade? Buy me a beer, you know, if you see them down in the casino. So there's ways to get it back. You know, most people have a conscience, unless you're like some people. And they'll remember that deal that you made, and they'll buy you a beer when they see you in the casino, or they might give you a dollar chip or something, you know. It's just like buying a new automobile. Everybody, the first thing that people ask you, did you get a good deal? Hey, if you like the car and you're happy with it, you got a good deal. End of story. You know. James? No, I didn't talk about condition of chips because I'm probably the worst guy. There's two people that are the worst people in the world on condition, me and Alex. The two guys you don't want to... Is Alex here? I thought I saw him come in. A friend of mine, Alex Soleno, we're not real big on condition, either one of us. If you saw our collection, you'd realize that. But condition is important, especially when you're dealing with the older, rare chips. Well, any chip, actually. If you're dealing with limited editions and you collect limited editions, if you get a new uncirculated limited edition, believe me, it's a heck of a lot better than one that's got dirt and grime and crud and the paint's faded on it. So be aware of conditions. Unless you're getting into an area where you're paying huge money for chips, and usually to me is over $6. If you get into that area, then you want to really start concentrating on condition, because condition is very important. And as James can tell you, he wrote the book on conditions actually first, and it is important, especially when you get to the point where you're collecting better Nevada chips. Always pay a little extra and go for top condition. Always a good recommendation, believe me. Look at them. Well, we have that happen. I remember that. And you know what? You can say what you want to, but there's one guy that does that, and he's got a beautiful collection. He really does. You didn't turn 40. I remember when you were 12, for crying out loud. That's great. Anybody else? Yes, sir? And there's a couple different schools of thought on that. Me, I'm a cleaning guy. I like to see them clean simply because I don't buy my chips for investment. I buy my chips to look at and go, gee, this is neat. And when I open my album and I see a bunch of cruddy old chips, I don't like that. But there's a lot of ways to clean chips, none of which I'm an expert on. There are some dealers who will tell you if you've got a rare chip, leave it in the condition it's in, because you might hurt it. But I don't think chips are like coins. Now, if you clean some coins, you run the value on them. If you clean chips, God, they're plastic, they're clay, they're whatever, you're not going to hurt them unless you screw up the cleaning and, rub all the paint off of them. Then it might, or the inlay, it might hurt them. But, yeah, I'm for cleaning. James? They'll... Yeah. Well, him and his partner Steve Wells are experts on cleaning chips. I had a dye swirl. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's a mold from Midwest several years ago that I found that I hadn't seen before. And it was a mess. I showed it to Steve. He took it home that night. We were here at convention and cleaned it for me. And when it come back, I thought he switched chips on me. I thought, gee, why would he give me this new chip? I mean, and him and James are experts on it. So if you need advice on cleaning chips and you run into either one of them, ask them. They'll tell you they're really good at it. That's not a bad idea. It really isn't. Anybody else? Well, again, I want to thank you for getting up at this ungodly hour and seeing us, and good luck to you and happy collecting.